Hey everybody, Jason Widup here. I'm super excited. This is the first installment that I'm doing of the By Marketers for Marketers series, not a podcast series. We don't know. We'll see what it turns into. I have an amazing B2B marketer here with me, James Gilbert, who is the head of marketing at CRM Next. James, why don't you say hi? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thanks for having me, Jason. Yeah, I've just assumed the head of marketing role at CRM Next about a month and a half ago. But before that, I oversaw ABM efforts at Cisco for the collaboration business unit. And then I also, prior to that, was the CMO at CloudCherry, which got acquired by Cisco. I've been around long enough to know that ABM was coined a term, and it's been around a lot longer than the term has been here. So from that perspective, I think I'm excited to talk about it today.
Nice. Awesome. Well, thanks for that. Yeah, and so our topic today, we're really kind of centering around ABM, are you really doing it? And so I think that's an interesting, because you mentioned, we've been talking about ABM, we've been doing, well, this is funny. Actually, I want to talk about when people say doing ABM, because it's funny, we had actually a conversation about this in our sales meeting the other day. And one of the sales guys says, it's a clue to me if somebody says they don't know if we're doing, it's just the say of doing ABM. He's like, I already know, like, I'm gonna have to do some education. It was kind of funny. Just like, so what do you say? If it's not, we're doing ABM, is like, we're running ABM programs, we have an ABM focus. Like, if you don't say we're doing ABM, how else do you say it?
I think it's funny because I think a lot of folks that have that question, are we doing ABM? It's because one, they're likely not bringing sales in early enough in the discussion. They're running campaigns and then they're going to sales and being like, sales, we need your feedback, after they've already come up with the campaigns and come up with the ideas. So then it sometimes falls flat, and then marketing's just trying to provide this air cover over here, this all these ads and things like that, and then they're asking themselves that question, like, are we really doing ABM? Like, we're personalizing an email and saying first name?
Yeah, right. Yep. Nice. Well, so we'll start by, we're going to take a crack at just trying to define ABM, and I'll start. And we didn't prep anything for this, and so we're just going to kind of shoot from the hip on how do we define ABM. And so I guess I'll take a first crack and say, to me, one of the most important parts of ABM is the target account list. So it's like, if you're doing account-based marketing, then who are those accounts that you are actually going to go after in those programs? So let's start there. So so lists, obviously an important part of ABM. Thoughts?
But it can't be driven from sales, right? This is something that should be funneled and should be directed by data. And I always talk about, intent data. A lot of people know that I talk about that. And I always feel like you need to triangulate the data. As a marketing ops guy who's come into a VP of marketing role, this. You have to triangulate the data to validate it. And I think a lot of times people will come in and they'll want to do an ABM strategy, and they'll just rely on sales and be like, okay, what are the accounts you want to focus on?
Yep.
But sales might not know that 3 of their accounts just purchased a competitor and they're on a 3-year contract. So then you're going to be wasting ad spend. You're going to be doing all these things and efforts that really aren't aligned to who is the lower hanging fruit to go after. So from a list perspective, I think you got to focus in those areas for sure.
I like that, because and I hate to pick on a company I've worked at before, but I will. Actually, I'll just leave their name out of it for now. This is how we did it. And it was a pretty big company. Like, it was, we had 1,000 people in the company, so it wasn't a small little shop. And we literally in marketing said, hey sales, can you just pick the accounts that you want us to go after? Like, that's how we started that account list. It's like, oh, just pick them. We didn't start with anything and hand it to them and say, here's some intelligence, go through. We didn't, on the back end of that, go and confirm it. It was just like, who's your whale list? And then we're going to go and we're just going to take that and we're going to run with it. And that was horrible. It didn't work, obviously. And in fact, the list ended up getting so big that we were just like, oh, so we're going after 25% of the B2B companies in America. All right, that sounds about right.
Well, I think the other way that we can define ABM too is outside of just lists is also this is going to sound really high level, but it's really a deep overall business strategy and GTM strategy. That's what it is. You you can't just have sales and marketing running this, because the data that you can get and the empowerment that you can provide customer success and support, and even product for that matter,
Yeah.
is exponential. I mean, I can't tell you, I've never seen a company do it better than Cisco, honestly.
Oh, nice. Nice.
Like, it was so well done.
Talk a little bit about that. So what were the components in there that you felt like were just like best class?
Well, look, they have a dedicated person. I have to be careful talking about this, actually, so I have to kind of finagle my way around it. But
Sure.
they have a dedicated person to every account. Okay, and that person serves as a gatekeeper on what gets pitched by Cisco, because Cisco has so many products that can help serve a customer. Okay, so from that perspective, you have a dedicated person that understands the business just as well as somebody who is living it in the business. They're working with sales and marketing together, and customer success and support are all working together to figure out, okay, if we have a customer, we're looking at intent data to look at, all right, well, are they going to churn? Like it's a predictive model. So some businesses have been doing this for so long, like Cisco, that they're now predicting, okay, a true churn model. And when so then marketing gets involved in that.
Yep.
They knew ahead of time that Zoom was going to have security issues during COVID.
Yeah, right. Yeah, yeah.
So they managed that, and they made out well for it. So, that's one of those things that you can really propel your company a lot faster than anything else.
Yeah. So I like this notion of it's not just a sales and marketing thing, because I think that's where a lot of people get hung up. And maybe it's because it's a much easier to do it within your own department, right? So it's like, oh, I'm going to do the motions because I don't have to necessarily go out and figure out how we're going to align with sales, how we're going to align with customer success, how does that data kind of make its way through. But if you don't do it that way, you're probably not going to get the full benefits, right? You might see some gains in the little areas, but then that might fall apart. Like you said, like, oh, maybe you did great on acquisition, but now your churn is actually higher, or, you know what I mean? You're not bringing the right people or something like that.
I think you have to have a dedicated representative from each function. So have a dedicated representative from product, have a dedicated representative from customer success, sales, and marketing, and build the ABM strategy around that. Because here's what will happen. Depending on how large your business is, you're likely going to have to build an account list with sales, right? Yep. But you're going to have to build a separate one for your customer base. And if you have a lot of customers, then you're not going to be able to focus on all of your customers at once. You're going to have to focus on the ones that are coming up with contract, right? Contract renewals. What are the insights that you can provide there? What is third-party data that you can provide that's also showing signs that they might actually be looking for a competitor product now rather than later? So
yep.
I think that's what you got to do there, is bring the right folks into the strategy.
Yeah. Cool. So we kind of talked about the list area, having it be, an entire company motion. So what's next in ABM? So is it orchestrating that journey through marketing into sales and customer success? Is it testing and experimenting campaigns? So what do you think is the next like big tenet of ABM?
I think with that team, you have to define what your buyer journey really is. Put yourself in their shoes and walk through it. I mean, you and I have gone back and forth on this, Jason, quite a bit on like multi-touch attribution, right? This is why like I get so passionate about the middle touches, right?
Yeah.
Which drives some people nuts. But if you really think about how people buy and you go through a journey exercise, that all those things really do matter, and they make an impact on a buying decision more than anything, more than first touch and last touch, right? So I also think when you go through the journey with your sales team, with your customer success team and your product team, they will pick out points in that journey that like, there's some insight here that we can provide. There's some insight here that we would like to get. And then you have really clear pathways of how to distribute the data, which is the hardest part about ABM. Distributing the data so that it can be actionable.
I can absolutely see that. I want to back up and talk about that can we call it the mid funnel basically? So you've got like the mid, because I was talking to my buddy Matt Cannell about this the other day, because he's very hot on this too. He's like, we often ignore that mid funnel. We're so focused on like the early intro and like the thing that got the demo request that like, And what I liked about when I talked to him about it, it was just as much of getting people to self-select out as it was to get them to continue down the journey, right? So it's like, so that the more people you have self-select out, that's less time that sales has to spend or your SDR has to spend figuring out if they're qualified or not. And so don't be scared of putting content out there in the journey. I don't know what you think about this, that might actually have people, okay, nope, that's not the right solution for me.
Self-qualifying is the easiest way to find the low-hanging fruit.
Nice.
And you've got to have demand gen, right? That's also feeding this. So people think of ABM and demand gen as two separate areas. Like, oh, if I'm going to have budget for ABM, I won't have it for demand gen. No, you build it together. That's why you got to bring in those functions. That's why it's a GTM strategy, because guess what? You can't do GTM without demand gen.
Yeah.
And the account focus and all that. I mean, those middle touches, I always use the example of review sites because I think they're the most applicable.
Yeah.
You don't typically go to a review site to search for software. You usually either get a referral from a friend or something like that. And you're like, okay, I'm going to look at this.
Yep.
Then you go to the review site and then, a BDR might reach out to you and you ignore it. Okay. And then, so that, by the way, a BDR touch is a middle touch. So you're also losing all that when you're not tracking those.
Yeah.
And then you might go back to the review site and do a comparison, look at customer reviews. And then deeper in the funnel, you might be looking at what are the differentiators between the competition, right? All of that data is provided by these review sites and you don't get any of it.
Yeah.
Because it's all middle touches. None of it's going to be the first or last, because a demo request is going to happen maybe from that review site, which is going to go where? To your website. It's going to be a form fill. It's going to be maybe a sales or a drift bot or something like that. That's going to pick it up. And that's going to be the last touch.
Yeah.
Not saying you shouldn't track first and last touch, because you need to, but you can't forget.
But you don't want to discount the middle stuff too much where you end up taking it out. Right. And I think that's what happens a lot of times. It's like, well, if we can't, and this is where I do like what how you think about attribution, because it doesn't ignore. Well, I guess it depends on how you look at it, right? It still depends on which attribution model or how you're doing attribution. And then of course, the big caveat is all this is based on what you're selling, the price, your sales cycle as well, right? Because so some are
verticals.
Not,
yeah. I mean,
yeah. So there's all that, like that stuff in there. But so you mentioned something, you said ABM and demand gen together, but they're different, right? So how do you see those as different? So when you think of ABM and then demand gen, how do you see those differences?
I think some of the things that you can do from a brand perspective and from traditional demand gen, like SEO, search, there are insights that you can grab from that, and intelligence that I would lump in marketing operations, right? Because marketing operations is typically going to structure that so that it can be fed and be acted on. So when you have really, really good marketing ops, that data then can feed your account model. And it can provide deeper layer of insights. It can make the insights a lot more actionable. So one of the things that we did at CloudCherry, we did it at Cisco, I'm doing it now at CRM Next, is rather than pushing this data all over to sales and saying, all right, here's all the intelligence we have, we're bringing them in earlier in the planning and the strategy. And then within not just giving them access to all the systems, because remember, that also takes them away from doing what they're really good at, which is selling. So we provide an entire PowerPoint. It could be as long as you want. And it's literally all the insights from every system that we have in one place, so that they can have a reference point anytime they want. Now you could do it different ways. I'm just if you wanted a low scale, low cost way, I mean, you could do that very easily with an account list. And I also think that people forget that some of the biggest companies in the world that are doing ABM really well are not focused on as many accounts as they might think.
Yes, that's I love that, because you're exactly right. Like I've worked at a big company where now it was tiered, but still the very focused top was 40 accounts, you know what I mean? And now the second tier was 400, I think, or 800, something like that. But that top tier is, and then you kind of tier out the experience that they might get, right? I mean, have you done that? Have you done something like that before?
That's exactly what we're doing at CRM Next. We have 3 tiers. Top tier is tier 1 with specific demographics that we know are going to be low hanging fruit.
Yeah.
And then tier 2 and then tier 3. And each tier can also feed into the other. So there's going to be things that are going to fall out of tier 1. for the exact same things that we're talking about. And if they fall out of tier 1 because maybe they just purchased a competitor, something else from tier 2 can be put back in.
Yep. Oh, interesting. Okay, nice. And then would they go down to tier 2? Is tier 2 and 3 more air cover and just kind of creating that, kind of starting to create that demand, starting to create the awareness, those kinds of things?
Yep. I think that, again, to answer your question a little bit deeper, like from the demand gen perspective and the brand, all the stuff that you typically do with your search and your paid advertising, but then I think you have execution moments with channels that are different. Like, for example, shameless plug for you guys, but I'm going to do it anyway. Like what Metadata does with bringing in the advertising platforms from Facebook and LinkedIn and all the social platforms, and being able to digest that for air cover for just the accounts. Yeah. That's a different type of execution of traditional demand gen. And right. That's what I mean by they're different, but they've got to incorporate the insights that each one of them bring.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I like that. And, my approach at Metadata is I've started with the bookends. You know what I mean? I started with like awareness and trying to get some attention, and then like, give me a demo, you know what I mean? And then slowly kind of started, because I didn't really have much to work with, and then slowly starting to, okay, what are those objections? Where are the people, where are they getting stuck? And then using that stuff to try and fill in some of the mid-funnel content. But I'm still trying to figure out the journey, like the best journey that our prospects take, you know what I mean? And so, yeah, it's trying to do a lot of testing, I guess. That's one of the ways. But
one of the funnest things that I've ever done with this whole model of ABM and demand gen mixed, right, is when I was at CloudCherry, we structured the buyer journey to be top of funnel, middle of funnel, bottom of funnel. Yep. We then laid out the content that we have, what we would need in the top of funnel and the middle of funnel and bottom of funnel. And then after we laid out the content, we then found channels like a G2 crowd, right? Yep. And where you might have somebody coming to the review site for the first time searching for software might be more top of funnel. So what they're looking for is educational content. So we would onboard them onto a toolkit that was all about educating about customer experience. All right. That's demand gen. Guess what? We were only doing it for the target accounts.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Yep.
So this is where the mix model can come into play.
Yeah.
And then in the middle of funnel, people were coming there. They might come to a review site, or they might go to our website and be looking at what other software is out there. Right. That's sometimes middle of funnel or even bottom of funnel. And we would serve them different things, like how to get buy-off from your executive team on how to do customer experience, providing them a template on literally like take this to your executive team and like fill in the tokens. That's all you got to do, providing really valuable things that they can actually do. And I think that was the funnest thing that I've ever been a part of in leading that. And it worked really, really well.
It's always nice when you see those things pan out. So we've been talking about a lot of like, hey, best in class ABM, Cisco, large company. I've kind of talked about large companies. What do you do? Where do you focus if you're like me? I'm a one-man band, maybe a two-person band here pretty soon. These smaller companies that still need to sell to large enterprises or just a step down from that and need to take them through kind of an ABM experience. Where, knowing they can't do all of it really well, where would you say, where's the best place to focus?
Well, I do think that you have to focus in narrowing down your account list to a manageable number, right? Yeah. And that's going to be smaller for even you, Jason, right? Because you're a one-man band, so you've got to focus your efforts in maybe like 10 accounts, right? Or less than that. And from there, I think that then you need to focus on, with the sales team, determine what is going to be the best approach into getting into these accounts. It might be, and you've got to lay it out for sales and customer success so that they understand these are the channels I can pick from. Yeah. So we would have a workshop, and I would give them a slide and be like, I want you to literally check the channels that you feel like would be the best, right? Let them decide, but then you as the marketer make the final decision. But only pick the ones that they pick that they feel like are going to bring the most value. I think that could be a good place to start when you're small.
Yeah, it's nice
starting.
Nice place for them to provide input as well and kind of help drive that alignment. I mean, I think where I've really focused, I'd say, is really on that trying to find interesting data to create the lists from. You know what I mean? So it's like, okay, my ICP is really anybody who sells B2B. You know what I mean? Who's doing digital ad spend and spending more than, I don't know, $9,000 or $10,000.
But narrow it down more.
Yeah, exactly. Because that alone is like, okay, I'm marketing to everybody. So then one of the things I tried, I found a way to look at and count the number of ads a company has on Facebook and on LinkedIn. So I hired this person to run a script because it's publicly available data. You just go to somebody's Facebook or some company's Facebook or LinkedIn page, click a button like page transparency on Facebook. It just shows you all the ads. And if you write a script, you can go through just that whole screen and count them. And so, hey, we help people advertise on Facebook a little bit better. I looked at, and I had them all counted, and if they had more ads on LinkedIn and Facebook, and then I had an intern go and look at the ads because I wanted to make sure, are they relevant? Like, are they selling B2B stuff? And are the ads on Facebook and LinkedIn about the same? And if they were, but they were way fewer on Facebook, I'm like, that is an in, and I can message them directly. But my problem was I didn't execute very well because I thought the audience was going to be huge, and it ended up being this tiny audience. And so I've got these like execution plans that need the huge audiences, and all of a sudden it's like trickling in. And so I love that way of creating the list. If it's outdated now, I'm doing it again. I'm going to try a different one. But I think it's really like that list stuff. Like, where can you get interesting data that will help you understand if they're going to be good for your product or not?
That's still good growth hacking, man. I mean, come on, like that's stuff that I haven't heard before. So it's interesting because so much of this, I think, is overcomplicated. You know, we try to get the perfect model, the perfect accounts, the perfect niche. And sometimes we just got to take a step back and realize, like, well, just try doing some stuff with a specific vertical or niche and see if you can get some wins. If you don't, shift, right?
Yeah.
Be agile to shift.
That, like testing, right? That culture of being able to fail, you know what I mean? And so it sounds like you've got it. We have it. Hopefully most people have that culture where it's okay to fail, because that's the way you learn best, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Plus, I think that when you also have customer success, product, and sales in the room with you when you're building your strategy out, they can also provide you input on what the ideal customer profile is, the ICP, right? Where you should focus, what verticals is it falling flat on. If you're like literally just starting out and you have no sales and you have no customers, then you got to do the growth hacking like Jason's doing.
Yeah, trying to find them under the rock somewhere. Like, I know there's a potential customer over there under that rock somewhere. I got to go figure it out.
But you did something that was really good too, man. That you used the conversational chat through LinkedIn, which I thought was really good. Yeah. You know, I signed up for a demo, even though I was already planning on demoing, right? So I thought that was really good because you didn't really sell. You made it very, very personal and human-like, and that's the key to all of this. That's what I mean by don't overcomplicate it. Realize that you're trying to get a human to buy your software, so treat them like it.
Exactly. You're selling to me and you, right? We're just normal everyday Joes. So
yeah, you've got to be able to shoot the shit with somebody before you get them to buy.
Yeah, and I said this the other day. I was like, I don't ever buy anything unless I have some kind of relationship, like transiently, sure, but like really anything substantial, just knowing that it's a solid product is almost not enough. I kind of want to understand, like, who's behind it. Is it, what do I think about them? Is it going to be a going concern for a while? So yeah, I think that we just can't overstate the importance of relationships in this stuff.
Agreed.
Cool. We're running out of time, so I want to wrap it up. Any last thoughts to leave our viewers with at all?
No, I just like the importance of just keeping it simple, and that's why again I think you need to bring in the other functions of the business because they can help you make it more simple, right? Yeah. They can help simplify your messaging. Product can help you with that. Customer success can help you with that because then that's a triangulation of the data: product, customer success, and sales. Have it be outside of marketing. Yeah, that's the one takeaway I'd say. If you could take anything from this, that would be it.
Awesome. Well, James, thanks for doing this with me. This was great. And yeah, hey everybody, thanks for tuning in to the first by marketers for marketers. And yeah, we'll see you next time.
Thanks, Jason.